Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Unholier podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Smith, and today I am joined by JC Groves. JC is the host of the Recovering Fundamentalist podcast, and he's also a pastor of Hope Church in Georgia. JC and I, we reminisce about both of our times in the IFB on this episode, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. So let's get started. Welcome, JC. We're so happy to have you here. And how are you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you so much for the invite.
I'm so excited to have you here. I have been listening to the Recovering Fundamentalist podcast for a few years now. And a couple years ago, y'all were at a church in Waterford, and my husband and I went and saw you speak, and that was a good time. I know you guys had planned on going to. There was a church even near there that John Hamlin was going to be preaching at. You guys were going to go crash that party. I don't know if that happened or not, but
we pulled up and I took a picture through the window of me waving like that. So we saw him preaching.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm excited to get into this. We have a little bit of a connection through the IFB where we were talking before our recording about my great-grandfather, Dr. G.B. Vick, was the pastor of Temple Baptist in Detroit, and of course the founder of the Bible Baptist College in Springfield, Missouri. And your grandfather was friends or connection, had a connection with him somehow. And
so my grandfather was Charlie Sturgill, and he ran with Bob Jones and a lot of those guys. And so G.B. Vick was a name that we all knew growing up. And of course, my good connection, one of my mentors, Dr. Mark Milione, is the president at Baptist Bible College in Springfield, Missouri, which is now Mission University. And but Mark Milione is one of my mentors. He's been on our podcast multiple times. So there's multiple connections there to GB.
Yeah, that's awesome. And of course, the IFB is a small syndicate that people can find connections somehow, right?
It's like Georgia here. We're all related somehow.
Yeah. It kind of feels that way. Some of the people in the IFB, maybe we would like to disown, but
100%.
Some of them we might want to keep. I don't know. We'll talk about that. Let's get into it. Give people who maybe don't know who you are a little bit about your background, who you are. And for those who do know who you are, we'll get into kind of what's next for you and all that good stuff later.
Well, I'm JC Groves. I'm a pastor here in Ringgold, Georgia, just south of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And we're from Indianapolis, Indiana, moved here to Chattanooga back in the mid-'80s when my dad left Heritage Baptist Bible College, which was a branch of Hyles Anderson, and moved to Tennessee Temple. He got shunned from that crowd and joined the Temple crowd. And we grew up. We were the kind of people that left Indiana, came to Chattanooga for school and never left. And I'm thankful for that. We love Chattanooga, Tennessee. Grew up independent fundamental Baptist, Highland Park Baptist Church, Tennessee Temple. Traveled singing Southern gospel with quite a few groups, and just lived the independent fundamental Baptist life. Went to Tennessee Temple University, worked in First Church as a youth pastor, was an independent fundamental Baptist church, and then God kind of radically changed my life. And for the last 20 years, my eyes have been opened, and man, it's been awesome. Been in ministry now 25 years in college and student ministry, campus pastor for a few years, and then lead pastor. We planted Hope Church almost 3 years ago now, and it's going absolutely incredible. Started a podcast about 6 years ago with a couple buddies called the Recovering Fundamentalist podcast. And we just sat down. We just wanted to kind of expose, I guess you could say, talk, just kind of bring to light some of the things that we saw while we were in the independent fundamental Baptist movement. Man-made ideology, preached his Bible. Our mission was to help and encourage people whose lives had been negatively affected by fundamentalist legalism in the church, but to also challenge those who promoted tradition over scripture, which is what a lot of the IFB do. And we didn't know that when we started this podcast almost 6 years ago that it would take off. And we actually just wrapped the podcast up. I just finished up episode number 200, and man, it was an incredible 6 years, close to 6 million downloads. Just a community. There are people that identify as recovering fundamentalists now. So we created a denomination and didn't even mean to on accident. I actually don't like that. But it was fun. And so we're pressing into some new ventures, but my whole life, I just I want to help people see who Jesus is and become followers of the way of him, and follow Jesus better, not man-made rules, man-made ideology, not legalism, but a relationship with Jesus. And it's grace, and it's mercy, and it's joy. It's the abundant life that John 10:10 talks about. And so that's where we're at. I got a wife, Kim. We've been married coming up on 17 years. We got 6 kids: Moose, Butters, Bubba, Sissy, Tink, and Little Red. I don't know their real names. I'm just kidding. It's Caden, Colton, Corbin, Kinsey, Katie, and Caroline. We got 2 golden doodles, a golden doodle and a labradoodle named Bobby and Bowden, because we're diehard Seminole fans. So I can tell you my social security number, but that's everything about me.
You know what, JC? I think this could be a really awesome conversation to have. You mentioned about, the IFB and kind of how we were raised in that. I'm just going to go ahead and call it a cult because that's how I feel it is. And we can get into that even more. But when I left the IFB, I had a point in time where I was away from God. Like I was angry at him, honestly, because I had been told that this particular person who was an IFB evangelist son, that person was God's will for my life. And so I was forced to break up with my college boyfriend, who I was madly in love with at the time, over the fact that he was not KJV only. I laugh at that now because it's just so ridiculous. But anyways, that marriage was very abusive, and I ended up divorcing him. And so I got out of church for a while. I was a single mother. I was angry at God because I'm like, I literally did everything that my parents wanted me to do. And the Bible teaches that, you have to obey your parents. And so I did all these things, and I followed all the rules, and this is where it landed me. Like, I just felt gypped. I felt like, what the heck? And there came a point where when I met my current husband, he wasn't saved. He wasn't a churchgoer, had no background in any religion whatsoever. And he had a better, kinder, sweeter heart than anyone I knew in the IFB. And I just thought, this is interesting, and immediately my dad was like, no, I'm not going to give you my blessing. You can't be unequally yoked. And I was like, look, I'm going to do it my way this time. And if I mess up, it's on me.
Right.
And I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And long story short, ultimately, I ended up finding a more organic relationship with God. God kind of drew me back to him. And that's a long story, but essentially what happened was when I got out of the IFB, I kind of went through my own like deconstruction, metamorphosis, if you will, where I was able to kind of find people outside of the church who were even more Christ-like than the people I grew up with, which was kind of weird for me, really challenging my paradigm. But then when my husband did get saved and we started going to I call it an IFB light church. It was at the time. Now it's pretty much non-denominational, but I was able to learn about Christ in a way that I never was before. So it was like you said, the mercy, the grace, the love, the acceptance, all of those things that I wasn't taught. It was like we were taught the God of the Old Testament. You're going to get struck dead. You're going to be judged. You're this, you're that. And always in this fear-based, like almost like you're forced to love him because otherwise he's going to do something bad to you. And that is not who God truly is. We're in the age of grace. And I think that people in the IFB forget that, especially when it comes to women. They really try to harp on what women need to do. We need to be subservient. We need to be obedient. We don't have a role. And that's just simply not true. And so I'm curious, was there something that happened within your IFB church that maybe it was, or like within the IFB in general, as you were kind of going through your Christian journey, that was like your breaking point? That's like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore.
Yeah. I've been asked this question so many times, and it's there's not one particular thing that like this event happened and I was like, I'm done with this. Mine was a lifetime of growing up in it. I think seeing it, and really from a young age. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and I'm thinking back to even stories when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, just seeing people one way at church and a different way everywhere else. And I was like, hold up. If they really had a relationship with Jesus, they would be the same person publicly, privately, personally. But it's like there's two different personas that they have to give off. There's the church person and then the away from church person. And I was like, that's not right. And of course, we know this. It happens even today, in non-IFB churches and all this. But where I really started seeing it was at a young age. And then when I started getting into college, let me back up. And when I was 7 years old, I got shoved up underneath the communion table and told, "Hey, you're a Christian." I was like, "Okay," I got baptized. Well, I lived my whole life learning to earn my salvation was from acceptance from everyone around us. It was the fraternity of the IFB, even at a young age. Please the pastor, please the youth pastor. Make sure everybody in the church knows you're the good singer kid with the suits and ties on. And you learn this life of living for acceptance in every aspect of your life. What you just said, for who you married. And, it's just, and so when I got into college, my sophomore year of college, I went to Tennessee Temple University. I left college, moved to Yadkinville, North Carolina. And I was engaged to be married to a pastor's daughter. I was doing the IFB thing. I was getting married to a pastor's daughter. I was going to be youth pastor at this independent fundamental Baptist church. I wore the suits. I had a closet full of them. I couldn't afford gas in my car, but I was going to buy a new suit because it's what you had to do. I was preaching at youth rallies in my suits, which youth rallies in the IFB are just glorified church services with like 8 kids sitting on the front row.
Right.
I hate that. Anyhow, that's a whole different episode. But I'll get on that soapbox really quick. But 15 days before the wedding happened, I'm sitting in church on a Wednesday night, second row on the right-hand side. Her dad, who was the pastor, was preaching out of Acts 9. And he was preaching on Saul's encounter on the road to, and it was as if God came to where I was at and said, "JC, I don't know you." I was like, hold up. Here we go again. That whole acceptance thing. And I pulled out this list, and I've given a visual, like a piece of paper that's tattered and torn and got stains on it. Like that was my list. I was like, but God, look, I went to Christian school. I've sung for you. I wear suits every Sunday. I'm marrying a pastor's daughter. I got a King James Version Bible. Like it's this list of all this stuff that I have done. And it was like I was just presenting it to him. But that night, something was different. It was like he said, "But JC, I don't know you." And I actually got up from service 15 days away from marrying the pastor's daughter and ran out of church. I didn't even think about what it looked like in that moment. Got into my car, miserable. A couple days, I'm just like, it was just this overwhelming sense of I couldn't shake this. And I knew, man, there would be times I'd be preaching and I was under conviction. I'm giving an altar call and I'm like, you're not saved. Like you're living your life based off this whole religious view of what everybody has said about you. And if I would sing a song and people would tell me it's good, I was like, well, I must be saved because there's my works. They're seeing the fruit, right? Long story short, 10 days before the wedding, 5 days later, I'm sitting in my Jeep at a dairy farm in Davis, North Carolina, and I struggled. The pride, the weight, the worry about acceptance from everybody in this fraternity was so heavy. And I just remember saying, "God, I'm done." And I took my hands off the steering wheel and I said, "God, I'm yours. Forgive me of my sins. I repent of this life of trying to live a perfect life to please everybody but you. And I'm done. Save me." And I'm telling you, for the first time, that peace that I had preached about and sung about, that joy, that whatever it was I was thinking I felt, for the first time, I was like this. It was like a weight lifted off my chest. I didn't see an image of Jesus come up on the windshield and the Holy Spirit didn't come through the air vents, but something changed in that moment. Went back, told the girl that I was 10 days away from marrying, "Hey, I can't explain this, but I just gave my life to Jesus." And she said exactly these words, "What is this going to do to me?" And I went, "Huh?" Okay, never mind. So I left. I drove 12 hours home on Saturday night, got home on Sunday morning, walked in, found our assistant pastor, Aaron Hampton, said, Aaron, I need to get baptized. He said, it's about time. I was like, what? You've known? He's like, dude, you ain't been fooling me. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So here I am, the preacher kid, the singer kid, who's worn a suit at this church since the mid 80s, who's done all these Christian things, who would live life with my buddies and then come back and sing in the choir on Sunday. I'm getting baptized. And people to this day were like, no, you were saved at 7. I remember when you got up there at 7. I'm like, I was going to stand before God and give an account for what everybody else thought about JC rather than what I knew. And I got saved, got baptized, went back to North Carolina. 2 rings were in the box. A note, I never loved you. I was in love with the idea of it, blah, blah, blah. So God saved me from 2 hells, one literal and one literal. So I packed up 8 days before the wedding, moved back to Chattanooga. And her dad said, don't look back. So I didn't. And it was at that moment that I was like, okay, I was new. There was a freshness about life, but I still didn't know how to break free from this cycle of legalism. And it was at that moment at 21 years old where I was understanding that it wasn't law. I wasn't having to keep this list of man-made rules to earn my salvation. It was a freely given. And that's when the change started happening in me. I worked at an independent fundamental Baptist church 2 months after I started, which was about a month after I moved back. The pastor embezzled $2 million. So here I am as a 21-year-old kid, just saved. I knew how to live the Christian life. My salvation experience wasn't like I went from a gangbanger to a Christian pastor. You know what I mean? It was just, there was a slight change. And I found myself pastoring Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, leading the music at this independent Baptist church. And I really started seeing how legalism affects everyone, and everybody was living for acceptance. And I said, this is a cult and I got to get out of this. And I left, went and worked at Cracker Barrel. And I was like, I'd rather work at Cracker Barrel and just go to church and grow in reading than be in this rat race of trying to earn acceptance. It's miserable. And it weighs you down. And I didn't mean to go off on that whole story there, but I felt like that sets the context for understanding this cult of the independent fundamental Baptist church. Now, listen, there's great people in it. There are good people that are really, I believe, love Jesus. I believe there's Catholics that really love Jesus that are Christians. I believe there's some Mormons. I lived in Utah who understand the Mormon church, but they're understanding Jesus and they're saying yes to him. You want to talk about a whole nother cult? That's a different podcast. But what I'm understanding is the IFB is no different than the Mormons, than the Amish. It's this cult following that you have to do these list of rules in order to obtain salvation. And I found that at 21 years old, and I've never looked back.
Yeah, that is so awesome. I applaud you for being able to cut that relationship off. I had a friend who literally, right before I walked down the aisle, grabbed me and was like, I have a car waiting out there. Like, you don't have to do this. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? There's like 450 people in the auditorium. Like, what am I going to do? You know,
it was terrifying. The embarrassment of, I mean, I had aunt and uncle from Africa that were buying plane tickets to fly in. We had to return gifts. It's funny. 15 years later, I found some of those gifts in a box. My wife's like, I'll use that knife. I'm like, oh my goodness, you know, but it's just, I'm so thankful that we did call it off 10 days before, you know, because I'd rather call off an engagement than have to go through a divorce, you know, because who knows what you're doing if you get divorced. I can't believe you went through that. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know. I'm going straight to hell because of it.
Exactly.
IFB, right? I'm going straight to hell.
Oh, that's the big D word. You can't be divorced in the IFB.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. No, they would just rather be in an abusive marriage and be miserable and have that exposed to their kids and everything rather than get a divorce, which makes no sense.
It's known that they're in that kind of relationship.
Yeah. I know. It's really sad that there are so many people, and there are a lot of people who are in those types of marriages within the church. And, I try to tell people all the time, like, I was a single mom. I didn't have a job before I left him. I had no money. I had nothing. If I can do it, anyone can do it. And there are resources and people who are willing to help, for women and children to have a healthy home and a safe home to live in. I mean, gosh, y'all, reach out. Seriously, if you're listening
Do
to
it.
this and you're in that situation, JC and I will help you out. Seriously.
Yeah, that's not the topic of today, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, that's where we're
Yeah.
at. Another question for you. Why do you think that like men in general in the IFB really look down on women? What do you think it is
Yeah.
about that just seems to be, and it's interesting you use the word fraternity, which is
Hmm.
so accurate. I'm like, yes, that's mind blowing. You use that word. It really is like a fraternity. And they just look at women like we are nothing. And why
Yeah.
do you think that is? Because that's definitely not biblical.
Well, I think it goes back to this ideology, man-made ideology, where we're the leader of the house. That's a God-given role that we've been given. But what happens is we're viewed as the leader to a max role, where everybody else is expected to be submissive and serve in a more supportive role, and that unintentionally leads to some like inferiority complex that these guys don't have that in any other thing. So they do it to their wives. There's other people that are telling them be silent in church. I really believe a lot of it comes back to a misrepresentation of scripture where they
Mhm.
take Bible out of context. I mean, let's be honest, that's something the IFB is great for doing. I mean,
Yeah.
how many guys stand up and only have 15 people at church and they're upset by that? And they're like, well, where two or three are gathered in my name. I'm like, that's talking about church discipline, buddy, not the crowd,
Right.
not the size of your crowd. But they take that verse like Ephesians 5:22, wives submit to your husbands, and 2 Timothy 2:12, do not permit a woman to teach or have authority over a man. And they've been interpreted as proof that women are like to be submissive and to be silent. And this is just cultural traditions that are passed down. It's the same reason we have King James version only.
Mhm.
They have to have a dictionary with their Bible, but that's what mom and dad had. And so that's what we're going to have. I think there's a fear of going outside of the bonds of the fraternity because it's what everybody teaches. And so there's just also this historical precedence that they have to be rooted in the precedence of generations that have come before us. They've held this, I can never say this word,
Patriarchy?
patriarch, man, that word always sticks. Patriarchy views because the IFB is highly traditional and resistant to change, and that can sometimes remain stuck in old patterns. These views that women are less capable or less authoritative than men. And so I think honestly, what it comes down to a lot of times is just this fear in a way of the woman may be able to teach better than I can. She may know more about the Bible than I do. And so that's why they're just like, it really, it all boils down to this fraternity mindset.
Yeah.
This is what these guys believe. They've taken scripture, they've twisted it to make it say what they want it to say. And now I've got to follow that. If I don't follow that, I'm not going to be invited to that service or to that meeting or to that lunch. And so I think a lot of the guys in the independent fundamental Baptist world, their view on women, specifically in the church, is not necessarily their view. It's just rhetoric that they're repeating because it's what they've heard. And it's easy to repeat rhetoric than to actually have an opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting because it's just like you brought up the verse about wives submit yourselves to your husbands. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, yeah, but then you got to continue.
Sure.
And husbands love your wives as
Yeah.
Christ loved the church and gave himself for it.
They stop
Well,
always with submission.
he gave his in everything to
Mm-hmm.
the bride. He ultimately gave his life. So
Yeah.
if husbands are supposed to be that way to their wives, then I'm confused as to what the men in the IFB are doing. I like that's what boggles my mind. I would read
Yeah.
that verse and then I would see how women were being treated in the church, and I'm like, y'all treat your wives like crap. Like I don't get it.
It's kind of what happens in a cult.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. It's that fear-based control that they
Yeah.
just want to keep their thumb down on them, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's complex.
It is a complex. That is absolutely right. I tell people all the time there's so many beta boys in the IFB. I just
Oh,
can't.
that's a
Okay,
podcast
next.
too.
Well, yeah, that is
That's an
another
episode.
podcast.
We've got 4 branches right now that we've already created, 4 new episodes for you.
Yeah. So JC, does that mean you're going to be coming back on every now and
Oh, the
then?
Unholier podcast. All right.
He's like, no, I'm going to have a lot more
I just
stuff
toss
going
it
on.
up and let you hit them out of the park.
Okay, so we did talk about the IFB being a cult. That was one of my questions.
Yeah.
Why do you think people refuse to leave the IFB?
Mm. Traditions are hard to break. I've heard this said so many times, and I don't want to mess this up. It's easier to take the person out of the IFB than the IFB out of the person.
Mm,
It becomes part of you. It is
mm,
so indoctrinated in you. Here, look, this is why we called our podcast the Recovering Fundamentalist Podcast. My go-to is legalism. It is in me. There are moments where I have to stop and check myself. If I
mhm,
see something or hear something, I'm like, hold up. Why did I just go negative on that? Hold up. Why did I just have a judgmental spirit in just looking or hearing or seeing and I have to pause? Why? Because I'm recovering from legalism and it is innately in me. And I think what happens is you get so indoctrinated with legalism, not Bible, but man-made ideology preached as Bible that, I mean, it's hard to break free from. I have buddies. I've never been an alcoholic, but I have friends that struggle with that. If they smell it, if they look at it, they're like, I want a drink of that so bad. They get the shakes because they have to have it. They're recovering from that. It's something that is always in you. And I think there's also a level of comfort, like they're so comfortable in it
yeah.
because it's familiar. I literally heard a guy years ago at that first church I worked at. He said, I can't understand everything about this King James Version Bible, but this is the one my daddy used and my grandpa used, and it's the one I'm going to use. Peter, Paul, and Silas, they used it too. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But it's almost, man, we're going to get on a soapbox here, but it's almost in a way simpletons. It's almost too easy to get away from it. You would rather just be a zombie and be told what to believe and just regurgitate the same rhetoric that you've always heard than to actually
Mhm.
study, understand why you believe what you believe. They take the man of God's word that it's Bible instead of actually going and studying and be like, hold up, that's actually not Bible that you're preaching. That's your preference. I think it's comfortable and you
Mhm.
you do have community in that. I mean, there are family. Listen, we started the RFP. It was a line in the sand moment 20 years out of the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. And I still at the beginning struggled a little bit with doing the podcast because I was like, man, there's conversations with some people I'm never going to have again. There are
Yeah.
circles that I'm never going to be invited back to. There are church services that I can never walk into again. And I even struggled at the beginning with like, that's going to suck. I kind of want to go back to some of those things at times just because there are relationships there. And outside of the context of church, they're still family members. But I think what happens is we get so comfortable in just going through the motions that leaving it, we can't think of anything outside of that. And in all honesty, that's the cult mindset. Anything away from this is not right. And so you drink the Kool-Aid and you stay, and you can't
Mhm.
think about what life outside of that looks like. And I think that's where, women being silent, being submissive, the pastor putting everybody under the rule of thumb, legalism, rules. Now, I mean, why did I swim in blue jeans as a kid? Because our
Right.
pastor said showing your leg is nakedness. That's not in the Bible. Why
Right.
couldn't we have sideburns below the knob of our ear at Tennessee Temple? That's not in the Bible.
Right.
Why did I play Jesus in the Chattanooga Passion Play and got demerits the one day that I didn't wear a badge that said beard badge at Tennessee Temple while playing Jesus at a Christian school? I get demerits. That's not in the Bible. That's just rules. Why is it that I had a King James Version Bible, but I started back in 2000 as a freshman, given a New Living Translation and reading the Bible for the first time and it coming to life for me? And I'm printing off pages of the New Living Translation and taping them into my King James Version Bible and reading the New Living Translation, but having the cover of the King James Version so everybody thinks I'm still
Wow.
reading the KJV. That's a cult.
Yeah.
That's nothing more than ideology preached as Bible. And that's hard to walk away from when you've only
Right.
known one thing for so long. It controls you, and you can't think of life outside of this. I posted this the other day. I said, freedom looks dangerous to those still bound by the chains of legalism. And that's where it's at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's really the traditions that have been passed down that aren't even in the Bible. They're just,
Yeah.
well, my grandpappy did this and his grandpappy did this. That
Yep.
it's just coming down from the different generations to where we're at now. And the families and the people have never known anything different. So when and I also think a cultural thing too, where a lot of
Sure.
the IFB, like the heyday of the IFB was really in like the 40s, 50s, 60s. And
Yes.
then once the 60s kind of hit, things started trending down a little bit. But
Hmm.
you have like the whole, women aren't allowed to wear pants and all of this kind of stuff that was entrenched in the culture even at the time. And
Yeah.
I think that they just adopted that and made it as their interpretation of the Bible, women shouldn't be adorned in men's apparel. Well, it's like they were wearing robes back then. I don't really know what else you're talking about,
Pretty
so
sure they all wore tunics, which are
right,
dresses. Like, come
exactly.
on now. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's the old time religion, the
Yeah.
50s and 60s. It's what Brian said it best. It's whatever era holds nostalgic in your mind, that's what you want to go back to. Because I've asked
Yeah.
guys a lot, give me that old time religion. I preached at a conference years ago. The choir got up and they saying, Lord, we need a fresh anointing we cannot borrow from yesterday. They turned right around and saying, give me that old time religion. And I was like, you're bipolar in even what you're singing. Like you want it. You have this ideology that you want this, but then you still want to hold on to traditions that aren't even in
Yeah.
the Bible. Yeah, it's stupid.
Exactly. Exactly. It is stupid. Exactly. So when people leave, they actually have the fortitude to leave the IFB and they're like, you know what? I am going to leave this. I'm seeing this as a cult. I don't think that legalism is the way. This
Right.
isn't biblical. And they actually are able to leave. What do you think that they struggle with the most when they leave the IFB from your
Oh,
experience?
acceptance. I
Yeah.
think that's, the freedom that comes when you learn to live from acceptance rather than for acceptance will change your life. But the problem is, you've done everything for so long, even if you don't realize it, to gain acceptance, to make sure your pastor approves, your Sunday school teacher, your youth pastor, your Bible study leader, your friends that are trying to earn acceptance. Also, it's this rat race that you're
Mhm.
running. And when you leave from that, you realize I've gone from legalism to freedom. I don't have to earn anybody's acceptance. I am who I am because that's who God said I am. My
Right.
acceptance comes from who he says I am. I'm a son and daughter of the Most High God. And you've lived for so long trying to please everyone with these stupid man made traditions that when you leave and you realize, wait, I don't have to swim in blue jeans. Like,
Right.
I don't have to, I can grow a beard and not wear a badge that says why I'm growing that. I can drink a beer. I can smoke a cigar. I can, like there's these things that you
Yeah.
still feel, you used to feel dirty. And that's why affairs happen. That's why so many of these guys are molesting. How many
Oh, yeah.
people in the IFB? They've molested people. There's porn addiction. There's affairs that happen. There's cheating and stealing and but they give off this whole persona that they're so holy when they're not. They're just putting on a resemblance that they're doing well. And I think when you leave, sorry, I went down another rabbit trail. There's another
No,
episode.
I love
I
it.
think when
I
you
love it. You're
leave,
a pastor. You're going to go down rabbit trails.
oh, not at all. That's the IFB days. I study for manuscript. But when you leave, you have lived so long indoctrinated that
Yeah.
you're a robot to follow a certain way, that freedom is hard to gain. I'm 25 years out, and there's still days where I find myself, man, it would be so much easier just to not post that or not say that. At this point, after 6 years and 6 million downloads of the podcast, I'm like, forget it. I'm the banner
Yeah.
waver for controversy, whatever. I'll call anybody out. Truth never fears a challenge. But I think the
Yeah.
reason it's so hard to leave is because you are losing that comfort zone of,
Mhm.
well, if I say amen right there, that means I agree and I don't have to worry about the controversy or the stipulation or the gossip that comes in a prayer request.
Yeah. It's kind of like Stockholm syndrome, you
That's the
know?
word I was looking for. You're so
Yeah.
smart. I couldn't figure it out. I was like, Stockholm. I couldn't
Yeah.
get the word out.
Yeah. They just stay. They know that it's not a good environment, but
Yeah.
they don't know anything else. So they would rather stay in this cult, in this abusive
Yeah.
environment. And instead of leaving, because leaving is scarier than staying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's sad because I think if more people were able to leave, have the guts to leave, because it does take courage to leave. It really,
Sure.
really does. I'm not minimizing that at all. It's hard
Not
to
at all.
leave, but I think we need to have more people who are going to change their family tree and break that cycle
Yeah.
and actually leave the IFB and go to there's plenty of great churches out there
Sure.
that aren't cults, that are teaching Jesus
Sure.
and God the way that he is supposed to be taught,
Mhm.
not some scary man up in the sky that's ready to strike you dead at a moment.
Yeah.
I think for me, when I left the IFB, acceptance obviously was a big thing, and I still struggle with that to this
Sure.
day. It's been years and years. It's probably been 18 years now since I've left the IFB. But I would say, and my husband always says this because, like I said, he didn't grow up in church. So he's always like, you still struggle with fear. Like, I
Mm.
still struggle with being afraid something's going to happen, or something's going to go wrong, or things aren't going to work out, or whatever, which is so stupid of me because God has had his hand on my life and
Mm.
just really, like, he has been so faithful. And that's one thing I will say. I could never be an atheist because I've seen his
Sure.
hand so clearly in my life and in my kids' life and my husband's life. It can't be denied.
Yeah.
I could never be an atheist because of that. But I have interviewed a lot of people who used to be IFBers, who used to be in the pews every Sunday night, Wednesday night, visitation, youth, everything. And
Yeah.
now they're atheists, straight
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And
It's the pendulum swing.
I just think it's really sad.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not going to judge them because I could see how they
Oh,
got to
easy.
that point. But I always try to tell people, like, do not put the persona of God as the IFB. The IFB is a
Mm-hmm.
cult.
Mm-hmm.
God is his own person. And the IFB is a separate entity that is
Yeah.
not even should not even be equated to God. But I think the problem is, and with any cult, people equate God to how they were raised in that cult. So they
Sure.
think, well, I don't want anything to do with that because this is how I was taught and this is how I think he is, when he
Sure.
really isn't that way. So I think that's the main thing I struggled with, really, is fear and acceptance, of course.
That's it. Along those lines, one of the things that I've learned, especially doing the Recovering Fundamentalist podcast, is you can present truth, but people have to learn to accept it, and they will do that on their timetable. When I lived in Salt Lake City, I went there. I'm from Georgia. I'm the Bible Belt. I'm going to Salt Lake. I'm gonna win these Mormons to Jesus. But what I learned real quick is, I'm going from one cult to another cult, and my thing was just show them the love of Jesus. It was when they started reading the Bible and when they started realizing who Jesus was that their eyes were open. The scales falling off Saul's eyes, that's very real. I mean, that's kind of what it's like. You have to see truth. And when you
Yeah.
see truth, you realize that it will change your life. And with the podcast, there's so many people, and I felt a little guilt, to be honest with you, about year 2, because we had so many people that were discovering truth, leaving the independent fundamental Baptist world. But we saw this pendulum swing. They went from this legalistic ideology to totally away from God, way gone. And I'm like, hold up, you're going it's one ditch to the other ditch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's got to be that middle road. But what we're learning, in 6 years in, we can see the whole timeline of this, is they did the pendulum swing. They went to the other ditch, but then they realized, okay, this is just as bad as the other one, and then they found Jesus and what a real relationship with him looks like. And a lot of those folks went atheist. If you're listening and you're atheist, my encouragement to you is keep investigating truth. Don't just, what you just said is so powerful. Don't just shun Jesus and his love because you were done bad in the independent fundamental Baptist movement. Investigate truth. And what you'll find is that he's a God that is approaching and calling and wooing and still wants to have a relationship with you, not based on what you can do, but because of who he is. And so, there's so many people that have gone so far to the other side, but when they realize who Jesus is and that it's not about what we can do to earn that salvation, because none of us could do that. None of us could earn our salvation. The IFB, it's all about earning favor. We are who we are because God says we are. And, I felt strongly right there to just talk to that person that has gone to the other side because of what the church has done, to just stay the course, keep investigating truth. And I know when you investigate truth, you'll understand what real life in Jesus looks like.
Yes, yes. Amen to that. So we
Sorry, I
talked a
went
little bit
pastor
of,
mode on you there. My bad.
yeah, I love it. I love it. Keep it going. Um, so we talked a little bit about the fact that not every pastor in the IFB is bad.
Mm-mm.
Is there anyone in particular that stands out to you that's doing it
Sure.
right?
I have a mentor. He's an independent fundamental Baptist pastor. His name's Billy Wood. He's up towards Atlanta, Georgia. Billy is independent fundamental Baptist as they come. But this dude loves Jesus. And he's the only person, even back when I was in the middle of it, that wasn't caught up in the hoopla of all of the cultish practices. I remember looking at him, and at times I'm like, "Are you sure you're independent fundamental Baptist?" This dude just loved Jesus, and I see Billy is probably one of my favorite people in the world because he loves Jesus, but he's still, I mean, One Baptist Church, they are still very independent fundamental Baptist, but he still follows Jesus, and there's so many that are doing it right, that really do love Jesus. And that's the problem. A few bad ones brought the whole lump, I guess you could say, but there are guys that love Jesus and really I think they're where we are. They're on the other side, but it is a tradition for them. And so they like the tradition
Yeah.
side, but they also have a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know the ones that aren't good are maybe a little louder than the ones who are good, and maybe
Well,
that's why they get a lot of the attention
the
and give
negative things
everybody a
always
bad
get the
name.
loudest.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of, I know that when you started the RFP, you had a lot of pastors who were using y'all as an example from the pulpit,
Still
which I
do.
thought was hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
So to guys like that who literally preach against what y'all were doing with the podcast, do you have a message for any of those pastors who are still preaching
Yeah.
against the
Thank,
RFP and what y'all are trying to do?
thanks for listening and
Exactly,
keep
right?
doing it. Keep listening because you're going to discover that your way is dead end. So keep listening. And
Yeah.
it's funny. I send guys all the time. Like I literally like 2 weeks ago, there's a dude, I think he was up in South Dakota of all places. And I
Wow.
mean, using my name from the pulpit, pretty much where the RFP is a cuss word. And so I
Yeah.
just shot him a text. I found his church, found him an email, sent him the podcast, said, "Thanks for listening." I was like, "I want to encourage you. We got 200 episodes. Listen to them all. And if you could actually say at the end of 200 that we're wrong, we'll delete the whole thing." He didn't write back. Listen, we've had guys now, it's gotten stupid. You throw a rock into a pack of dogs, the ones that get hit are the ones that bark the loudest.
Mhm.
We've had some guys that have barked really loud. Unfortunately, over 6 years, I mean, we had to get some legal things,
I was gonna ask
threats.
that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, okay.
threats made, death
Mhm.
threats, things
Wow.
sent to our churches, doxed. I mean, my phone number's been put out so many times, and which is fine. I save it. I just laugh at the emails and phone calls now. There's a few scary folks, I guess you could say, that with my kids and my wife. Now you start messing with kids and wife, that
Oh
takes it to a
yeah.
whole different level. And so we've
Wow.
we've had some, we'll just say, more intense law enforcement in on some of those things
Wow.
over the course. People are dumb, and when you start calling
Yeah.
out their livelihood and bringing to light just their moneymaker, if you will, they're
Mm,
gonna they're gonna go into defense mode.
God.
And so that's happened, but it outweighs the good outweighs the bad for sure. There's always crazy people everywhere. You just gotta carry a gun and be all right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Death threats? I mean,
Yeah.
I just that's definitely not Christ-like, y'all. I can't
Yeah.
even believe that.
Enjoy your podcast. I hope it never gets to that point.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well,
There's some crazies out there.
I'm looking forward to the day when my podcast is used as an example from the pulpit. I mean, I that would excite me. That would make me very happy.
You probably won't know about it
Yeah,
because a lot
unless
of
someone
times they'll
tells
edit
me.
it out.
Yeah.
And I mean in the beginning it was this undercurrent, this rumble, and and then the podcast episode changed because I mean you have presidents of colleges, Clarence Sexton at Crown College, he called us stupider, and I mean it's hilarious
Wow.
knowing for a fact the guy that's sitting right behind him listens to the podcast and the look of sheer terror on his face. I mean when you got Hamblin who's running all over Michigan up there, and
Right.
I never thought that my name would be associated with the negative side of the IFB. I said at Lee Robertson's funeral in 2007, behind three of the most, I would say, influential individuals in the independent fundamental Baptist world. And I remember praying, God, I want to bring some reform to the IFB. I want to do something that will change this whole structure. Had no idea that 15 years later we'd start a podcast, and that would be one of the main things that these guys would harp on. But I'm so thankful for it. Truth never fears a challenge. Truth
Yes.
is consistent with itself. Truth correlates with reality. If you have truth, you have nothing to fear. And so that's what we did with the podcast. And you know what? Those that will curse our name and threaten to kill us or dox us or whatever, it's for truth. And I will do it all over again. And that's why we're not going to take down the podcast. We've wrapped up the podcast. I just finished with episode number 200. So we're done recording the RFP, but it's going to be there. As long as people are clicking play, the RFP will be there. And I just got a message this morning from a young lady at a Christian university. I'm not going to say which one. She is a sophomore, grew up in a pastor's home, was molested by a
Oh,
deacon. I'm telling you, this girl's story broke my heart. But she said these words: I found the podcast. I'm on episode 4, and I've sat in my dorm room for 2 days and bawled my eyes out. You're saying things that I didn't know was fact. I thought I was alone. That's why we did the podcast, for that girl sitting in that dorm right now, listening. Who knows what episode she's on? She skipped school for 2 days and is listening to the podcast to find hope, give
yeah.
encouragement. That's why we did the podcast. And I will take death threats. I will take morons standing up in a sermon and saying my name just to get a few amens to help that girl find encouragement in life. It's worth it.
Wow. I love that. I absolutely feel the same way. And to be able to find other people who have similar experiences and have gotten out and
Yeah.
who have found God organically and have an organic relationship with Him, and to be able to encourage each other, you are
Yeah.
not alone. If you're listening to this,
No.
you feel like you're the only one that's going through this. I can tell you there is an army of people that are out there. We can
Yes.
just wrap our arms around you and encourage you and give you resources and find you a good church to go to, all of those things. Please reach out if you're listening to this and you feel like you are alone, because you aren't.
Definitely. You are not
Yeah,
alone. There are more today that are more vocal
absolutely.
about not being in it than even 6, 7 years ago. I mean, think about how many podcasts. Your podcast is one of them. I mean, when we started the RFP 6 years ago, I could not find anything
Mhm.
about fundamentalism or the cult following. That's why we started it. Now there's 15, 20, 30 podcasts that are all very similar, but
Mhm.
are reaching so many more people. So I'm thankful for it. I mean, hey, if we had to be the
Yeah.
pioneers and got the lashings and the thorn scrapes and cuts and the cussing and the death threats, it's well worth it.
It's worth it. It's worth it, definitely. And with this podcast, I don't just focus on the IFB. Of course, that's
Sure.
my personal experience, but I have people on from all different aspects of different cults, and also like even just religious trauma, because that's a real
Yeah.
thing. And the troubled teen industry. Oh my gosh, like
Wow.
getting into that and going down that rabbit hole is absolutely terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there would even just blow your mind.
Yeah.
Some of the great people of the IFB were involved in all of this troubled teen industry
Sickening.
stuff that really was none other than like human trafficking, child exploitation, all of that. You would be surprised. But let's kind of change course a little bit, and we're going to end on a little bit more of a fun note. So I want to just do a little hot take for a second. So my
Uh-oh.
hot take, so my husband's favorite part of the RFP was always the introduction, where
Oh
you have
yeah.
the clips of all the different preachers. And I don't know if it was Phil Kidd or who it was. I think it was Phil Kidd. You're like, yeah.
Here we go.
Who was the one that says Jesus was not a bartender?
I'm pretty sure that was Hamblin, actually.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jesus was not that's Hamblin.
It's Hamblin.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is so funny because here's my hot take. Because this comes up in conversation quite a bit with people in the IFB, just talking about like, oh, wine in the Bible is actually grape juice. It's not wine. And that was like a whole thing. I mean, they legit think that Jesus made just grape juice.
100%.
And I'm like, have y'all ever seen a Jewish wedding? I'm sorry. They're quite fun and they're not drinking grape juice.
No, not at all.
So my
read the Bible.
Is he actually did turn the water into wine, y'all.
Yeah, 100%. And it said he brought the good stuff. They saved the best for last. You're not going to save grape juice for the end when everybody's wasted. You're going to bring the good stuff. For wasted people to say this is the best, come on, they were drunk.
Right. I mean, Jewish weddings, those are pretty fun weddings. I mean, I'm just saying, they weren't sitting around drinking grape juice or lemon water.
Exactly.
All right, so that's our hot take on that. So tell us a little bit about what is the next chapter for you? I know the RFPs, the chapter is closed on the RFP, but again, you can still listen to it, watch it. It's available on all platforms, but what is next? I'm excited to talk about that with you.
So the podcast was incredible, and we were so thankful for 200 episodes, 6 years of that. But I felt a sense of responsibility to not just help people break free from the bonds of legalism and not have anything to go to. This is kind of like the IFB. You pray a prayer, you got your get out of hell free card, now just go live. There's no discipleship. There's no growth. There's nothing that will help them understand what it means to be more like Jesus, to grow in their faith. So 6 million downloads, huge community, people identifying as recovering fundamentalists. The name Recovering Fundamentalist Podcast, there's a negative connotation in many circles that we've talked about ad nauseum here today. And so I wanted to change the name. And my saying that I say here at the church all the time is that we are, as Christians, we are followers of the way. We're following King Jesus. We're growing to become more like Jesus every day. And so coming in January of 26, we're starting a brand new podcast called Following the Way Podcast. And it's going to be one that is not, we're not hitting the negative. If I never hear another King James Version debate again, great. If I never talk about legalism again, great. Other than being a guest on podcasts that will talk about the RFP, that's not what Following the Way podcast is going to be about. It's going to be about helping us grow to become more like Jesus. But the podcast is just going to be one portion of what Following the Way is going to be all about. There's going to be resources on there, Bible studies, small group material, personal devotions. We're going to have a tab for counselors, those that have been freed from legalism. There's some PTSD. There's some trauma that comes with that. And they think what we just talked about, they're alone. And we want to give an opportunity for people to be able to talk to somebody, a trusted voice that they can go to our website, followingthewaypodcast.com, find some counselors, click on that, get some help with religious-based trauma. So we're excited about that. We're working on getting those counselors lined up. Not just that, there's going to be coaching that's going to happen, pastoral ministry, guys that only know how to be pastors in the independent fundamental Baptist world. It's a totally different world when you pastor in something that's not an IFB church. And a lot of these guys, the problem is they don't know how, because that's the only training they have. And so we're going to have coaches lined up. I've got 3 incredible presidents of some universities already on board. I've got 3 pastors already on board. And so what this is going to be is an opportunity for, you as a podcaster, as a lady that leads whatever you lead, maybe you need to talk to somebody and want some coaching. And so there'll be men and women on there that you can go click on a coaching session, do a 30-minute call, an hour call. You'll be able to line that up on your own. But these are trusted voices that are going to give good advice and help. I think what happens too many times is we're like, okay, great, you're freed from legalism. Go and don't be that way anymore.
Right.
But we don't give them the steps. There's no guardrails. There's no help to get to the next level. And I feel very, very strongly that we've done the RFP well. We've led millions of people out of legalism. but it's kind of like college ministry and church. We do really good in kids, really good in student ministry, and then they graduate and we're like, go volunteer. Thank you. This is the next step. This is following the way of Jesus. It's putting practical tools in your tool belt to help you be a follower of Jesus. So I've got two incredible hosts that we're not ready to reveal yet who they are, but I'm telling y'all, these two hosts, it blows my mind that they even said they would think about it, much less yes. And these guys are incredible. We got a couple books that are going to be coming out next year. The resource platform is going to be awesome, fully downloadable for churches. There's guys that are pastoring churches that are like, I wished I had a curriculum that I could use to help my people understand what it means to follow Jesus. It's going to be the followingthewaypodcast.com is going to be a resource center for the church to grow, to become more like Jesus. And I am so fired up. I'm so excited about it, just to be able to turn the corner, to stop talking about the stupidity in the cult that we came from, to break free from the legalism. Because in all honesty, talking about it, I feel like I can't get freed from it because it's been my life for 6 years. I was out of legalism for 15 years. Then we started this podcast and I'm like, man, I'm right back in the middle of it. I'm thinking about what I'm wearing to church again. Why? Because I'm talking about it, like just stupid little things that I found myself in. But I want to be able to take what God's done in my heart and give it to the world. And so that's coming in January of 2026, Following the Way podcast. You can go real soon. We're working on the podcast, on the episode right now, or excuse me, the website right now, followingthewaypodcast.com, and stay tuned. It's going to be awesome.
That is so awesome. I'm excited for you, JC. And I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today and really appreciate you taking the time to come on here with me and have this discussion.
Thank you for the invite.
Everybody, make sure you're following JC, and the podcast is going to be coming out in January. I'm excited to hear who your hosts are. So stay tuned.
Drum roll, please. We'll be announcing it soon.
I can't wait. So anyways, thank you so much, JC. Wait. Before you stop listening, I just have one thing to say. This is the boring part, guys. It's the legal jargon. Just wanted to make a disclaimer that anything you hear in this episode is all alleged. As you know, everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Although we do believe victims and we support survivors and believe their stories, we do have to be careful with accusing people. Thank you so much for listening.